Hello, this is Dr. Scott Denstead, founder of EZWxBrief, your best online source for aviation weather and education. Welcome to episode 17 of EZWxChat, a program to discuss various topics related to aviation weather. Thanks for joining again. So in this episode, we're going to explore the terminal aerodrome forecasts, or TAFs. Now, terminal forecasts are probably one of the most detailed of all the forecasts that pilots use in their pre-flight planning. So it's important to understand how they get generated and essentially how to use them in the EZWxBrief application. Now, TAFs, for the most part, are going to be forecasts that you use usually maybe the night before, but certainly in the morning or the day of your flights. So let's go ahead and explore terminal aerodrome forecasts. So in EZWxBrief, the way you would get to the terminal forecasts is after signing in, you can click on Start, and then the Quick Start menu, go down to View Airport Weather. So this is the EZ Airport page. And EZWxBrief always remembers the last airport you type in. And so in this case, we're looking at airport from Nashville International Airport. Of course, not every airport in the country has a terminal forecast, but you'll essentially be able to get a mediogram and all these time series graphs here, as well for just about any airport in the country, as well as southern Canada. I just want to show you a few places of how to get to this EZ Airport page. So you can get to it from the map. So when I go to the EZ map display, you'll notice in the upper left here there is a little miniature airport or airplane taking off this airport or this runway. So that's another way to get to the airport page. Or if you're on the EZ Route profile, this button that you see here on the right, also that has the same icon that shows up as well. So either you can go to the Start, View Airport Weather, or you can find this airport selector, and that way it'll take you right to that. Another approach, for instance, if I'm looking along my route of flight and I want to identify a specific airport that I want to look at, so I can certainly do that. So by hovering my mouse over that, I can see information about that airport. And again, that's valid at the time that is shown here in this pop-up. I can also click on that, and that'll take me right to that airport. Or essentially, I can view any of the segment points, the weather at those segment points. At the same time, I can click on that, and it will take me to the nearest airport. So we'll go to the Nashville airport that we have set up here earlier. Again, to just reiterate, I can set this particular airport as a favorite. So I can create that particular airport as a favorite. I can save it in the root folder, EZWxBrief, or I can add a new folder, or I can look and add it to an existing folder. I'm going to do that. Now I have my airport saved as a favorite, and then I can go in and look at that particular favorite in there as well. So I can launch and get to the EZ Airport page from my favorites as well. The other aspect of the Easy Airport page is I can go to my home airport. So whatever I've defined in my, in this case, my preferences, my home airport is here as Rock Hill Airport, KUZA. I can click on this home button and that'll take me right to my home airport. Now for the Easy Airport, we have multiple page selections that we can fill in this particular area. Right now it's showing default as the meteogram. The meteogram can be set up to show a 3-day view or a 1-day view. So essentially each one of these is hour by hour here at the bottom. But by clicking on this kind of hierarchy button here, that'll show you that you have the ability to see the meteogram, look at the latest observations for the airport if there are any, look at the latest terminal forecast if there are any, bring up a skew-T diagram for that particular airport, go to the forecast discussion, or look at the LAMP MOS forecasts. So we're going to focus today on the terminal forecast or terminal aerodrome forecast or TAF. Now in EZWxBrief we show the last 12 hours worth of TAFs. Starts with the latest one at the top and works your way all the way through less recent one at the bottom. So we can see this one here, the first one was issued at kind of 1120Z, so that's the 12Z TAF, and it was amended. And then here's the 18Z TAF issued there for Nashville. And so if it turns out, typically you'll see at least 2 listed, maybe sometimes 3. If there were more amendments, they would be listed essentially as they are amended. The other aspect you'll see on this particular, the way the TAFs are laid out, is that you'll also see some color coding. So in this case, if the ceiling or visibility happens to be in the low IFR category, you'll see that show up as magenta. You don't see any in this particular case. Or in the case of fog, FG, if it were to appear there, that also would show up as a magenta. If it was IFR conditions, whether it would be visibility or ceiling, they would show up as red. In this case, we do have some marginal VFR showing here as blue for visibility, but again, it would be ceiling or visibility would be highlighted as blue here. And of course, green would be things like sky clear or better than 6 miles. And that provides you with a overview of kind of a quick glance at what the limiting factors are for that particular TAF. The other thing we also highlight here is kind of a brown color, is that if the winds are greater than 14 knots or the wind gusts are greater than 19 knots, we will highlight that in a brownish color. Also true of non-convective low-level wind shear, if that existed here, that would also be shown here as a brown color. So we're trying to kind of highlight those areas that would give us the most difficulty when we're looking at this from a perspective of adverse weather. Now, terminal forecasts are typically issued on a scheduled basis every 6 hours. So we look at it from the 0Z issuance, the 6Z, 12Z, and 18Z issuance of a TAF. Now they can be amended at any time. And once again, EZWxBrief will show an AMD tag at the end if it has been amended, but you can kind of figure that out also by looking at the times. Normally, if the 12Z TAF would normally be issued, the requirement is for the forecasters to have that out 20 to 40 minutes prior to in this case 12Z, so we see that this was at 11:20. That's 40 minutes prior. In this case here, it's 17:38Z, so it's almost at the 40-minute mark there, or 20 minutes before mark. So they had that window of opportunity where they issue, or supposed to issue, the terminal forecast, and then anything that's issued after that 20 to 40 minute prior period will likely be issued as an amendment, unless it is for some reason delayed. Now, I said that the TAFs are normally issued at selected airports. There's about 700 airports in the U.S. and its territories. And they're issued, typically scheduled to be issued 4 times a day. However, if you are in some of the high impact airports, so places like Atlanta, Chicago, or New York, you're going to find that the TAFs in that area are typically going to be issued more frequently than every 6 hours. And that's basically because of the impact that TAFs have for situations such as how much fuel an airliner needs to carry and whether or not essentially an alternate needs to be filed. So in that case, they like to keep the TAFs as updated as possible. Now, even those airports still issue their scheduled TAFs, but you may find that in New York airspace, it's every 3 hours. Atlanta airspace, every 3 hours. But in Chicago airspace, it actually might be every 2 hours. They issue a brand new TAF. However, those non-scheduled issuances, even though they're planned, will carry an AMD tag associated with that. Unfortunately, that's just the way the game is played. Although it may not be because the TAF is being amended because it doesn't meet the current thinking where the weather is currently at or where it's going to be in the next 24 hours or so. So just in case you happen to see that, that's the reason why. Now, TAFs are typically issued for most airports for a 24-hour period, and we're talking specifically now about National Weather Service TAFs, not military TAFs per se. And in some cases, they may be issued for 30 hours. Now, these are, again, typically due to long-haul operations, so aircraft that are international, they're flying close to 18-hour flights these days, needed a 30-hour TAF. So for the most part, the entire world, for those higher impact airports, will issue a TAF that's valid over a 30-hour period. But most of the TAFs are still issued at a 24-hour period. Now, the TAF itself, I'm not going to spend any time kind of breaking down the TAF code. You can, even though in EZWxBrief we don't decode these for you, you can certainly, most of the electronic flight bag applications, where you can go to aviationweather.gov, you can actually see a decoding of those. It's pretty basic overall. Typically, there's a forecast for visibility. There's typically a forecast for wind. There may be a forecast for ceiling or cloud coverage. I said visibility, also an obscuration to visibility such as mist, haze, and the present weather. So if there were a forecast, for instance, for thunderstorms or for showers or for freezing rain. And there's also non-convective low-level wind shear, which is not a forecast for turbulence. It's a forecast for vertical speed shear in the atmosphere, which may or may not be turbulent. In most cases, it is non-turbulent. Now these forecasts are issued by local weather forecast offices around the country. So when you are looking for those offices, they are local to the area. So if we're looking, for instance, let me pull this up on another chart. Here is the Aviation Weather Center aviation forecast discussions, which are all available in full in EZWxBrief. You'll notice that every single one of these particular areas here that you see colored in the United States is a separate weather forecast office. So here in Charlotte, we're covered under the Greer Weather Forecast Office, Greenville-Spartanburg Weather Forecast Office in Greer, South Carolina, and they issue a forecast for up to 6 airports, including Charlotte Douglas International Airport. And so they're the ones responsible for issuing those 6 TAFs in that particular area. And that's typically something that's good because they know the local weather very well here. They forecast it for their what's called the county warning area. So every one of these areas that you see here is called a county warning area, or CWA. And those county warning areas are essentially the area that they forecast just the basic forecast, but to also issue severe thunderstorm warnings, severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings. They will also issue flash flood warnings, all those kind of things that occur in that particular area. So they're very comfortable with the local weather for those airports. Again, that's good. The forecasts that also come out of the weather forecast offices are the same ones that are issued for that, or the precipitation forecast that you see on the Prog charts as well. So if we were to go to the Weather Prediction Center, and these are available in EZWxBrief as well, but let's go ahead and take a look at the Prog charts here. So let's go here to Prog charts that are in EZWxBrief. We basically pull these Prog charts, but I want to show you that these are actually the same Prog charts you'll find on the Weather Prediction Center website. So the forecast that you see here in green all come from the forecasters that are located at those weather forecast offices around the country. And you'll notice sometimes they happen to typically follow, in some cases, the hard boundaries of a state. We know that weather doesn't obey geopolitical boundaries, but sometimes that happens as these forecasters are putting this weather in. So they put it into a grid, and that grid gets essentially ingested and put on this particular chart. The nice thing about that, if you think about it, is that they should, for the most part, be pretty consistent with, in terms of the actual weather forecast that you see here for precipitation type, should be pretty consistent with that of the TAF at the valid time. So this is 0Z Thursday. So if we were to go to this area and look, we should see, for the most part, we should see a definition of thunderstorms in those terminal forecasts in that area. Or if it were freezing rain. The only thing that you have to worry about is that this could be as low as a 15%. So this kind of light green color here could be as low as a 15% chance. In that case, most likely the TAF will not have any mention of thunderstorms until the probabilities start getting up there, certainly above 30%, but most likely 50% or greater. So it's important to understand that even though you might say, well, Scott said that, this is showing the possibility of some thunderstorms here. So we got the red hatched area that you see around this. If I go to the Greenville Spartanburg Weather Forecast Office for 0Z Thursday. Well, actually, probably won't go out that far. So if we look, for instance, here, let's go to Charleston, for instance. We go to Charleston's forecast office here in South Carolina. That's showing a dark green, and that's 12Z on Wednesday. So if we were to go to that and show the, let's see here, show the Charleston, KCHS, and sure enough, you're going to see at 12Z tomorrow. Of course, it's very possible that it says here it's 2 miles, rain showers, thunderstorms vicinity. This is right at the cusp where now we just have showery precipitation. That's still a convective process. That's still a convective process in place. So ultimately, they're going to show, in the case of in this particular case here, Charleston is this area here. So if we were to look at that, let's go back to 12Z on Wednesday, that particular area here is showing a really good chance of what essentially is thunderstorms, but it also includes showery precipitation, which we know is a convective process. So once again, they should match pretty well, which is really important from the standpoint of pilots trying to better understand what's going on compared to the other forecasts. So there's not a lot of chance for being ambiguous about what kind of weather is at that airport. They should match for the most part. So the terminal forecast is a point forecast. It's a forecast at the airport itself. It's not a forecast that covers an area that's 30, 40 miles from the airport. In fact, the actual forecast for the TAF is specifically suggesting a 5 statute mile radius from the center of the airport's runway complex. So when you look at this, it's really forecasting for that particular area. It's not valid 30 miles from the airport. The vicinity, like in this case, there's rain showers in the terminal area, that 5 statute mile area, but they're showing thunderstorms in the vicinity. That means, in this particular case, for terminal forecast, that means you're dealing with thunderstorms that could be in the 5 to 10 statute mile range, which does not include that 5 statute mile area. That's the vicinity. It's the donut-shaped area around the airport. So that means that we're trying to forecast for an area that is incredibly small, to the point where even some of the highest resolution forecast models don't necessarily give you a forecast that's that down to that resolution. Sure, there are forecast models that do, but it's still, from a overall practical standpoint, even if your forecast model has a 4-kilometer resolution, in reality it can only resolve something down to about 8 kilometers. So we're really approaching the ability for these forecasters to have guidance down to that particular level. So it's an incredibly difficult forecast that has to be made by meteorologists day in and day out. And so when you start thinking about something like thunderstorms in the forecast, it really has to be very well, a lot of confidence that there will be thunderstorms in the forecast, especially when you're talking about what's essentially the forecast for tomorrow. So this is a forecast that was issued at 18Z. Now we're seeing after about 9Z that there still could be the possibility of 2 miles of visibility, heavy rain showers, and thunderstorms in the vicinity. That's a pretty, to see a forecast for thunderstorms for the next day usually suggests it's going to, essentially that weather is going to be dominate, and there's a good signature in the forecast for that to occur. And we can look at other products to kind of validate that. So in Charleston, they're expecting, for the most part, from 3Z on to have showers in the vicinity, or thunderstorms in the vicinity with rain showers in the terminal area, even heavy rain showers. And if we were to look at, for instance, and go to the static weather imagery and look at, for instance, the, let's see if we can see the WRF ARW model for the southeast U.S. and see how far that goes out here. So that's, we're looking at there. So you can see here, Charleston is in this area right around here, and you can see that as of 8Z, 9Z, there's going to be some weather coming around here in that area. So essentially, this is the uncertainty, because most of that weather is going to be further to the north, not necessarily down in the immediate Charleston area, but certainly kind of right on the edge of that we see, and it's going to dissipate in the morning. We kind of see that being the case as well in the terminal forecast. So there's a little bit of uncertainty here as far as that goes, but nevertheless we do see that that kind of matches. If we were to go up maybe towards Wilmington and look at the weather there, there's Wilmington International. Pull up the terminal forecast for that, and they're only showing basically no thunderstorms, but this is done by a different weather forecast office. This is the Wilmington forecast office, and they are showing the possibility of light rain showers and showers in the vicinity. Again, we see that on the simulated reflectivity as well, although they did have, it looks like, well, this was 19 to 23Z for the 12Z TAFs for today, but essentially if we look at tomorrow's forecast, they're looking at essentially showers, rain showers, and showers in the vicinity through that period. And you can even see to some degree some of that coming about here. So if we look at the let's see, let's go to here and let's look at the convective potential here, and certainly you see that coming out with the convective potential for EZWxBrief. The convective potential is on the lower side. Thunderstorm probability is around 9%, but that starts out as early as, let's say, very low at 6Z and gets a little bit higher and lasts, for the most part, through that entire period through 17Z. So the forecast that you see here doesn't come from the terminal forecast. It's a separate forecast that I pulled together in EZWxBrief for many different forecast models. So I just want to kind of give you just a quick summary. The forecasts for terminal forecasts are a point forecast, valid typically over a 24 or 30-hour period. And they're issued 4 times a day and amended as necessary. And the goal is to provide you with a good forecast for that particular terminal area. So if you're departing from that airport, headed to that airport, or maybe using it as an alternate, that's a good approach. Just be real careful of using it as an en route forecast. Unless you're flying directly over that airport, it doesn't make sense to try to use that particular airport for your pre-flight planning, simply because it could be on the order of 20, 30, 40 miles, especially as you go out west, where these airports are much further apart. Be careful about using the closest or nearest airport for that. Not saying to ignore that. Certainly if you are headed along that route, that other airport might be a great airport to land at if you need to, if for some reason something went wrong during the flight and you needed to land early terminate the flight, knowing the forecast along that route is real important. And if there's a major weather system, most likely there's going to be a pretty consistent kind of view of those terminal forecasts, but that doesn't mean in every weather situation that will be the case. All right, that wraps up episode 17 of Easy Weather Chat. My name is Dr. Scott Denstead, and as always, I hope you enjoy the simplicity of EZWxBrief.